Welcome, greetings all. Yes, I am becoming a self-parody, thank you for noticing. With a name like this, I was supposed to be a bit more of a self-parody from the beginning, to be honest. Anyway, if you watch my vlog channel, which approximately 0.0004% of you do, you'll know what this video is going to be about. We focus now on another branch of the arts. This time, bunnies. Hello. Whee. Oh, a big bunny. Yeah, just kidding, it's architecture. This time, architecture. I'm going to talk about a place I visited last year with my family, taking the opportunity to film various mediocre shots that I can put into this video. Oh yes, today I shall be talking about what makes Himeji Castle an architectural great work. Himeji Castle. Lovely. So, why does Himeji Castle stand up? Why does it stand up? So, why does Himeji Castle stand out above the others as the Japanese castle I want to highlight? Japan has a number of very beautiful castles. Why not Matsumoto Castle or Kumamoto Castle? Well, perhaps those two will warrant videos later on, but Himeji Castle stands out. Not just because I personally find it extremely beautiful and impressive, but because it tends to be the Japanese castle that gets the most attention in the Occident. It's the only castle in Japan that's a UNESCO World Heritage Site without being part of a larger complex, and trust me, Japan is very keen on its UNESCO World Heritage stuff. And it was amongst the first handful of sites in the country recognised by that organisation back in 1993. It's the background of a James Bond film, it's the largest single castle in Japan and receives the most tourists, and more importantly than all else besides, it's a wonder of the world in Civilization 5.
Bushido is realized in the presence of death. This means choosing death whenever there is a choice between life and death. There is no other reasoning.
Nice. Also important for me is that while this castle isn't the original one that stood on the site, the existing structure is centuries old. In Japan, earthquakes, fires and warfare mean that a lot of castles didn't necessarily last through the ages. Tokyo no longer has a castle for this reason, it burnt down long ago, and Osaka's was rebuilt in the mid-90s. And yes, I mean the 1990s, not, the 1590s. So Himeji Castle isn't the oldest in Japan. That's a somewhat disputed title claimed by, on one hand, the remains of Maruoka Castle, which were built in 1576 and did fall down in an earthquake in 1948 and get put back up again a few years later with an attitude of, see, nothing happened. And on the other side, Inuyama Castle, built in the early 1600s. Though important parts of the structure remain from 1440. Himeji's current deeply impressive edifice has stood since 1609. Sure, that may not put it up with the pyramids for being ancient, and there are probably pubs in every county of England older than that. But given the beauty of this castle, the elegance and complexity of the construction, and the impermanence of most Japanese architecture, this is pretty impressive. Of course, there has been a lot of restoration work over the years, including one of the huge structural pillars the castle is built around being replaced within the last century. And when I first moved to Japan in 2015, the castle had just finished a 5-year renovation. But there's no doubt when you enter the castle that it's authentically a centuries-old space, as opposed to when you enter the rebuilt Osaka Castle and it's like stepping into a modern school building. I feel like I make that very specific complaint a bit too much about poor Osaka Castle. Sorry. But yes, when you enter Himeji Castle, you know you're stepping into a space that's been broadly unchanged for centuries, and that's a very valuable feeling, it really is. These steep staircases. What all we see up here. Wow. Very nice. But no hamburgers. So yes, that's why I'm making this video. Himeji Castle is an extremely beautiful and historically significant structure in the country I've been living in these past 5 years. and undoubtedly a marvel of traditional architectural design. And did I hear historically significant? What exactly happened here? Well, I'm glad you asked. The first version of this castle was a fort built on the hill in 1333, an easily remembered date. The Shugo, or governor of what was then Harima province, constructed it at the end of a tumultuous period of Japanese history, with the Kamakura shogunate having just been overthrown at the siege of Kamakura. Honestly though, there aren't many years in Japanese history you can pick that aren't marked by war, tumult, and someone or other getting overthrown. Akamatsu Norimura actually opposed that particular imperial restoration, and was part of the later Ashikaga shogunate, which took power in 1336 and actually managed to keep it for over 200 years. The fort he had built here in Himeji did not last nearly so long, being torn down and rebuilt as a castle by Norimura's son Sadanori. At this point the castle was named after the hill on which it stood, and was known as Himeyama Castle. Around 200 years later, various power struggles had led to the castle being under the control of the powerful Kodera clan, who left the castle under the command of their retainers, the Kuroda clan, who built up the castle and renamed it Himeji. This isn't a particularly huge change in name. Essentially it went from being called Princess Hill Castle to Princess Road Castle. I don't know who this princess they named the place after was. Place names don't always have to be that literal. Various famous princesses have lived here, including Princess Sen, famous for enduring an extremely tragic life, but it was called Himeyama long before she was alive. Anyway, because it was still a time of much upheaval, pretty much par for the course in feudal Japan, the Kuroda clan split off from the Kodera clan because Kuroda Yoshitaka thought that Oda Nobunaga was going to take over the world, while Kodera Masamoto thought that he would be stopped by the better established Mori clan. Handing over control of Himeji to Nobunaga's retainer, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, was arguably absolutely instrumental in Oda Nobunaga defeating the Mori clan, and if you paid attention to Bill Wurtz's very pleasing video, you know that's pretty big for Japanese history.
This clan is ready to make a run for it, but first they have to trample this smaller clan which is in the way. Surprise, the smaller clan wins, and the leader of that clan steals the idea of invading the capital and invades the capital, and it goes very well. He's about halfway through conquering Japan when someone who works for him kills him, and then someone else who works for him kills them, and that guy finishes conquering Japan.
So, there's an argument to be made that Kuroda Yoshitaka's decision to go behind his master's back and give control of Himeji to Oda Nobunaga's forces completely changed the course of Japanese history. In recognition of his contribution, Kuroda Yoshitaka's crest was supposedly included in the castle's tile work, and since he was a Christian convert, you can see a Christian cross even today in this historical Japanese site. Though whether this is directly connected to Kuroda historically is a little bit questionable. It might just be a nice story for tour guides to tell. When Tokugawa Ieyasu rose to shogun in 1600 by defeating the forces of Toyotomi Hideyoshi's son Hideyori, he gave the castle to his nephew, Ikeda Terumasa, who would grow to be nicknamed Saigoku no Shogun, or the shogun of the west of the country. Though Toyotomi Hideyoshi had been expanding the castle, Ikeda got rid of the newer buildings and constructed the main structure of the castle that exists to this day, finishing work in 1609. While the importance of castles waned after this period, with Japan largely united at last, Himeji was not demolished, though it was abandoned and used as army barracks in the late 1800s. Managing to survive through this period was fairly miraculous. An army colonel managed to convince the government not to go ahead with demolition, the local resident who bought the castle for 23 yen couldn't go ahead with tearing it down because it was too expensive, and the bomb that hit the castle in World War II just happened to not detonate. With the structure also surviving the Great Hanshin earthquake unscathed, it's easy to believe that the structure is somehow blessed. Though of course if it had been destroyed in any of those situations we just wouldn't be thinking about it most likely. Conversely to being blessed, there is an entertaining story that it is also haunted. One variant of the famous ghost story Sarayashiki is set in Himeji Castle, wherein a servant named Okiku is framed for the theft of a precious plate and murdered by her master, then cast into the well. This well, or one that can be conveniently labelled as such, exists in the castle as a tourist attraction to this day. And if you've ever wondered where the idea of ghosts in Japanese media having strange obsessions with plates comes from, well, now you know. Architecturally, the castle is simple and elegant, really. I talked about its complexity before, but it's really complicated only on quite a superficial level. Two huge wooden pillars support the bulk of the structure, running pretty much the entire height of the building, up to the floor of the highest level, each one weighing about 6 tons. One of these pillars was replaced during the renovation work in the 50s and 60s, but the other is an original from when the castle was constructed in this current form, shortly after the unification of the whole country, leaving out some complications about Hokkaido and Sakhalin. Around these sturdy central parts are another 189 pillars, forming the rest of the walls. Given that most houses in Japan are only meant to last around 30 years, this is a real lesson in longevity. And lest we forget, the wood used in these pillars is far older than the structure because, the trees had to grow that big before they could be used here. The approach to the castle is winding and narrow, reminding visitors that this was originally built as a defensive structure, despite the beauty and many ornaments. The gables are particularly elegant, with both the characteristically Japanese diagonal chidori gables and curved Chinese gables too. The castle is nicknamed Shirasagi Castle, or White Heron Castle, because it brings to mind a heron taking flight, or it may even just be because of a local association of the place and the birds. I can't say I really think it looks bird-like at all, but it is certainly an evocative name for a beautiful place. Himeji Castle probably won't last forever. Very little does, especially in Japan. If it is destroyed, it can certainly be rebuilt, but there's something special about it being original in this form, at least for me. This is a remarkable place that I'm very pleased to have visited, and I hope to do more videos about such historically significant and visually impactful places in the future. But yes, I hope I have thoroughly explained what it is that makes Himeji Castle a great work. That's all for today. I really feel like I should go back to literature, so I'll probably make a video about another classic book soon. And with that, well, please do all the usual YouTube stuff, and I shall leave you on that thought. Thank you for watching, and until next time, bye bye.